Hey guys, so I'm new to this video thing. I want to kind of share some thoughts, what I've kind of learned. I'm guessing a lot of you are just like me. You bought one of these Slash Modifieds or Mud Boss. Couldn't get it to turn. They come terrible out of the box. I've been running this now for a couple of weeks, which doesn't sound like a very long time, and it's not. But in that time, I've actually learned a lot about the car. I got my first win last night, and finally getting the car to do what I want it to do. It handles well. It's actually a good race car, and I thought I'd share what I've learned. It's been a fun journey. I guess the best place to start is where I started. When I got the car, I watched what videos there were online on running these cars, which basically are all geared towards outdoor, softer courses, which would be great if I was running outdoor soft courses. But I think, like a lot of you, I'm running on a very high bite, glued dirt surface. So those techniques really weren't working for me. I found initially that I was just creating a lot of body roll. Traction rolling was a major issue. Car was slow, and it didn't help that I was a new driver, but it would have been slow anyway you slice it. I actually went back to the original settings a week ago just to see what would happen, and I lost 0.6 of a second with those initial settings that I had done. So it really wasn't the best thing for the car. And so now, after learning a lot more about how suspension works, a lot more about how all your angles work and how they affect your car, weird stuff that I never knew anything about until a couple weeks ago, like Ackerman angle and how the front end is affected while you're turning. It's been really fascinating, but it's also translated to a really good car. So I'll start with some of that stuff and see where we end up. Like most of you, when I got started, my thoughts were geared towards running the car as low as I could get it. The obvious thing is to try and get the center of gravity as low as possible. And I thought that lowering the suspension would lower the center of gravity, which it does, except that it comes with consequences. And those consequences are what I was finding after doing some research and learning about how to set up a car. Initially, I was running the car really low, a little bit triangulated based on things that I had learned, so really offset from side to side, trying to get the back end pushed down because we've got all that problem trying to keep that front left tire in the ground. And I wasn't able to identify it early on, but I was getting a ton of bounce in the front of my car, and it was an adventure. It was really hard to drive. It was really the car was really all over the place. Whenever something would go wrong, I was always in the middle of it. Whether I started it or not, I couldn't stay away from it. And so getting the car to handle, obviously that was job one. And I think I've got, I don't know how to even say. I think I've kind of got it there for my surface. Obviously it will be different for other people and other places, but it's counterintuitive how I actually ultimately have gotten the car set up, but it's actually super intuitive once you see what I did. The default setup on the suspension in the back is turned out, I want to say it's basically 16 threads. I didn't measure it, so I don't have the exact numbers. I have a feeling that that's based on having a Traxxas battery in it. I think a lot of us would be in the same boat, where we're actually, thankfully, our track is allowing us to run shorty batteries from our 10 scale buggies. So we're able to not have to have so many batteries and minimize how many chargers and everything we have to have. It also lowers cost because there's a lot more options available as far as the batteries are concerned. And so I think having that smaller battery and not necessarily having it all the way back causes the rear end right from the get-go to not be sitting quite as low as it would sit with a factory battery. So I think, so as I was saying earlier, you know, I was trying to kind of lower the car to lower the center of gravity, but I wasn't also taking into account how the original setup really should have been, because I never really had that setup. They set this car up for their batteries. They certainly did not set it up for my batteries. And I think that makes a huge difference. I think the factory angles on the car, memory serves, it's 2 degrees in the back, 2 degrees in the front of camber. The toe is out, I want to say 1 or 1.5 degrees for the factory settings. That's not that bad. It's great for turning left and right, but we're only going to be turning left. So we've got to take that into account when we're setting up the car. It makes a giant, giant difference. So probably the first big epiphany for me when I was learning how to set these things up is on the rear suspension. The logic, like I was saying earlier, the logic is to lower the car to lower the center of gravity. That comes with consequence though. When you lower the car to thinking you're lowering the center of gravity, what you do is you actually make the suspension from the back sit at the wrong angle. Ultimately, this angle for your lower A-arm, when you look at this, you really want it to be as flat as possible. What that does is it causes the car, when you're turning, when you're on a load from the side, right? Because we're turning, it causes the suspension to stay more level. When you lower it above, what happens is you cause the suspension to roll up harder in the corner, and which causes a lot of that body roll that we're having and traction rolling that we're all fighting on these cars. So one of the biggest things that I learned was just set this thing up as level as possible from the get-go. Get the car so that it's sitting flat on the ground. That'll get you so when you're turning, the back end's just turning and not rolling as you come around the corner. That'll save, it's amazing how much easier the car is to drive. Ironically, you're probably gonna raise the car, not lower it. I'm probably running the highest car at our track, which again, it seems counterintuitive, but there's a big difference between lowering the center of gravity with the chassis and lowering the car with suspension. If we were able to run tie bars on our suspension and lock that together, when one side lifts, the other side would lift. We'd all be wanting to run the car like this so that it would be as low as possible. We're not allowed to run those in this class, so we've got to really take into account how the suspension is going to interact as we're driving around the track. There is the ability to adjust the body height on the car. You can adjust this upper bracket here. There's a couple of screws. I'm sure most of you have found those, if not all of you. You can raise the body up, and that's going to give you more wing. This car has a humongous rear wing, and it actually has a fair amount of front wing. That scoop in the front does offer a lot of downforce. What I found, and I'm actually hearing about people taking this rear wing off completely, but what I found is if you raise that body, when you're going down the straightaways, the car starts to jack in the front end. You can't go fast if your tires aren't on the ground. That's like job one, right? At the end of the day, is you got to keep your tires on the ground. Even if you're racing motocross or supercross, you want to keep the motorcycle as low as you can. The more time you're on the ground, the faster you can go. It took me a while to identify what was going on there, but don't raise the body. I could see raising it if you're running outdoor on a really soft course. I think it actually probably could be really helpful, but on that firm course, there's no way. It just doesn't need it. There's plenty of downforce in the front end with that scoop, and too much if you raise it up. I actually even tried putting foam in the rear wing to raise it up because I'd heard that was a good trick. It's not. It's not for a firm course. The one thing that you can do, I'm actually running like two-sided tape on the inside of the body, on the edge of the wing. That just keeps it from flexing. So at least the car is consistent as you go around the track. So that is, as far as wing and body, that is the one thing that you can do to kind of keep the car stable on the track.